So hey everyone, I welcome you all to this data structures and algorithm workshop. My name is Animesh and I am with my friend Mayank, and we are both from the Mozilla Campus Club of Bharati Vidyapeeth College of Engineering Pune, and we are here to discuss some of the important topics regarding DSA. So let's get started. To start off, I would like to discuss something about data structures and data. So data is a very integral part of our applications and program, right? So if I define a program is nothing but a set of instructions that are used to operate on the data, and they are used to generate certain results. So without data, there is no need of any instructions or there is no use of any instruction. So the term data is used at multiple places like the data structures, databases, data warehouses, and the big data. So I would like to give you a surface level introduction of each one of them so that you could distinguish them properly. So data structures can be simply defined as the arrangement of collection of data items so that they can be utilized efficiently. So it's all about arrangement of data and performing efficient operations on data. But the important question lies where? So it's always inside the main memory during the execution of a program. So I'll take an example to explain you all how a program actually utilizes data and why we even have to use data structures in the first place. So in this diagram, you can see we have the HDD storage that can be also known as the permanent storage that we have in PCs, or in phone we have the storage, be it 64 GB or 128 GB. This is the main memory, or we could also say it as RAM or the primary memory, and this is the central processing unit. So whenever we install an application, it gets installed into the HDD or HDD storage, or you could say the permanent storage of our device. So let us take an example of the commonly used software MS Word. So whenever we wish to run the application of MS Word, we click on the icon and the program files related to MS Word are brought into the main memory. Now suppose we want to open a document file inside the MS Word program. Now the MS Word program cannot directly access the data in the HDD storage. So the data has to be brought into the main memory so that the application program can use it efficiently. So from this we can say that every application has to deal with some sort of data. Now how you organize that data inside your main memory becomes a very important task so that the application can run faster. So organizing the data inside your main memory is known as data structures. So I hope by now you have a basic understanding of what data structure is and where is it used. So now moving forward to databases. So let me give you a little idea about databases. So in databases, we're generally talking about large size data, be it the commercial data that is used in businesses, banks, or retail stores. So you have these huge chunks of data that is huge chunks of organized data that is stored in the form of database tables, or you could say it as relational data. So these database tables will be generally stored in the permanent storage. So when we're talking about data structures, we generally are referring towards the main memory, but in case of databases, we are referring to the permanent storage. So talking of commercial data, businesses have huge data coming in it on daily basis. So this very large size data may not be used on a daily basis, right? Like 1 year old data or probably 10 years old data, it may not have its application on a daily basis. So this data which is currently inactive right now, it can be said as legacy data. And to store this huge chunks of legacy data, we use certain arrays of disks that are known as data warehouses. Now obviously one disk is not enough, so we use arrays of disks and they are known as data warehouses. And also the algorithms that are written to analyze the data that is stored in warehouses are known as data mining algorithms. And talking of the final one, that is big data, with the start of the internet, there has been a huge amount of data accumulating day by day on the internet. This data can be about things, people, or places in general. So you could say that a lot of data is available on the internet that can be used for analyzing and performing various decisions. Many decisions in management or governance or businesses can be taken by analyzing those data. So the storing and analyzing of this very large size data, this study is known as big data. So let us come back to our main topic, that is data structures. So data structures are normally divided into two broad categories, that is primitive data structures and non-primitive data structures. So the primitive data structures include integer, float, character, and pointer. So basically we have covered all of these topics in our previous videos. So if you wish to learn about any one of them, you could check out our previous videos. Now let's talk about non-primitive data structures. So some very commonly known data structures, non-primitive data structures are as follows. You could say lists, stack, queue, trees, graphs. These are the examples of non-primitive data structures. So if we talk about the difference between primitive and non-primitive data structures, non-primitive data structures are kind of derived from the primitive data structures. So they are a bit more complex than the primitive data structures, as the name suggests as well. And most of the primitive data structures like int or float are generally predefined into the language. But for example, if I talk about trees and graphs, they are not predefined into the language. But if I talk about integer and float, these are primitive data structures, so they are predefined into languages. So here is the list of most common operations that can be performed on non-primitive data structures. So you can obviously create a data structure, you can obviously select an element, you can update an element, you could search for a particular element or value that you want. You can sort the whole data structure into whichever order you wish to. You can merge two or more similar data structures, you can obviously destroy one. So the non-primitive data structures can also be further classified into linear and non-linear data structures. So the linear ones include arrays, linked lists, stacks, and queue, and the non-linear ones are graphs and trees. So linked lists, stacks, and queues and arrays have already been covered by Harshit and Arun in their previous data structure workshop, so you could go check it out. So now let us move forward towards the second part of this workshop. Let us discuss about algorithms. So whenever we need to solve a problem, we come up with solution towards solving that particular problem. So an algorithm is an exact step-by-step procedure that we follow while solving that particular problem. So when we are talking about computer algorithms, these algorithms are well-defined sequence of steps that will give you a particular result or an output, and then when their job is finished, they will terminate. So here we have a task of driving towards our friend's house. Now, I will not recommend you all to do it because we are still in the middle of a pandemic, guys. So let's assume a situation that you want to drive towards your friend's house. So the first thing you will do is find your keys. Then you'll probably walk out of your house. You'll close the door, obviously. Then you'll walk into your car. You should also probably wear a mask. Then you'll turn on your ignition and probably drive to your friend's house. So this is how a task can be broken down into certain steps that can be followed for achieving that particular task. So an algorithm must have these five properties. The input must be specified, the output must be specified, it must be a definitive algorithm, it should be effective, and it should be finite in nature. So if you look about the previous example, we wish to go from point A to point B. So the input and output was specified. We followed a particular path, so it was definitive and effective, and it was not infinite. So these five are the core principles for making an effective algorithm. So talking about the first property, Input is the data that is fed into the computer system in order to achieve an outcome or an output. Input precision will require that you know that what kind of data or how much or what form of data you want to use. So the second one is output. Output is obviously the final result or the final intended result that we wanted. Generally, algorithms are named on their outputs, such as algorithms to compute batting averages. Output precision also requires that we know what kind of data or what form of data we need in the output. Talking of definitiveness, it becomes really important that an algorithm must specify the steps and the orders of the steps that are taken into the processes. Details regarding each step must be mentioned, and no step must be missed in between. So the fourth property is effectiveness. So an algorithm must be effective and all its steps must be doable. Because what is even the use of having an algorithm that is ineffective? So the fifth property is finiteness. So an algorithm must stop after achieving its end goal, be it expected outcome or be it the case where no solution is possible. Finiteness may become an issue for computer algorithms because sometimes they tend to repeat the instructions with different data again and again. So here are few instructions to write an algorithm. So algorithms can vary from problem to problem or resource to resource. The one rule you should stick around with is algorithms are never written to support a particular language. Yes, you may use some common code constructs such as loop or flow statements. We generally write algorithms in step-by-step manner, but it is not always the case. Algorithm writing is always done after we have a very well-defined problem domain. So now moving forward, here is an example on how to write an algorithm. We have to design an algorithm to add two numbers and display the result. So to start off, step 1 will be start. Then we will define three integers, you could say them a, b and c, and we'll store the result in the integer c. Then in step 3 we define the values of a and b. In step 4 we finally add the values of a and b, and the output we get in step 4 is stored into the integer c. And then finally in step 6 we print the value of c, and then we stop. So here is an alternate to the previous algorithm, this one being the more shorter one. So what we have done is we have just combined the two different steps for inputting A and B, and we have made one step out of them. So this algorithm is a little more easy to analyze than the previous one because it has less amount of unwanted definitions. So let us take one more example. So as you can see, this is the Euclid's algorithm. It is used to determine the greatest common divisor of two numbers a and b who are non-zero numbers. So we have to apply this algorithm as long as one of the number is not zero. So if the first number is greater than the second number, we will replace the first number by the subtraction of the both numbers. And in case the second number is the greater in those two, we will replace the second number by the subtraction of the two numbers. So as a result of these operations, we will have one of the numbers being converted into 0 and the other number will be our result, that is the greatest common divisor. So in this particular scenario, we have selected the value of A as 28 and B as 36. And we are about to find the greatest common divisor of both of them using the Euclid's algorithm. Now since 36 is greater than 28, we will replace 36 or the number B by the value of B minus A. So by the end of this step, we'll have the value of A as 28, which is unchanged, and the value of B gets to 8. Now applying the Euclid's algorithm again for these two numbers, we have 20 and 8. So clearly 20 is the greater number. So we will replace the value of A by the value of A minus B, that is 20 in this case. So now we have new value of A is 20 and the value of B is 8. Now applying the Euclid's algorithm again, we have A greater than B, so we'll replace A, that is 20, by the value of A minus B, that is 12. So we have our new A as 12 and new B as 8. Now yet again we have the value of A greater than B, so we'll replace the value of A, that is 12, by the value of A minus B, that is 4. So that makes the value of A equals to 4 and value of B equals to 8. Now this time we have B greater than A, so we'll replace the value of B by the value of B minus A. So now we have the new value of A as 4 and the new value of B as 4 as well. Now both the values of A and B are equal in this case, so the number on A is greater than or equal to the number on B. So we will replace the value of A by B minus A, that is 0. So eventually leading to the value of A being 0 and the value of B being 4. So now as you can see, one of the numbers have become 0. So it is the time for the algorithm to end. We have our output, that is the value of B, which is equal to 4. So we can conclude that the GCD for 28 and 36 is 4. And we have calculated this using the Euclid's algorithm. So now we have already seen a couple of examples about algorithms. Now let's discuss what makes an algorithm good. So the very first thing is it must take less time to run. And the second factor is it must consume less memory. Now if we wish to analyze the efficiency of an algorithm, we can do it by actually analyzing the amount of resources that are being consumed while solving the problem of, let's say, size n. And generally these resources are mainly time and space. And the way to check out the efficiency of an algorithm is to run it and check the processor time needed. So here are some factors affecting the efficiency of an algorithm: the hardware, the operating system, the compiler used, the input size, the nature of the input we take, and finally the algorithm itself. Now discussing a little more on the time and space factor. Suppose we have an algorithm X which has input size of n. So the time factored is measured by counting the number of key operations, and the space factor is calculated by counting the maximum memory space that is required by the algorithm to run. and the function f of n will give us the running time or the storage space required by the algorithm in terms of n, which is the input size of the data. So guys, that is it from my side. Thank you for watching. And now Mayank will take over and he will discuss about sorting algorithms. Thank you.
Hello guys, myself Mayank. I will be explaining you about the sorting arrays. So let's get started. Okay then, let's start with sorting. So what is sorting? To arrange a set of items in sequence. Let's look it in deep. Sorting is a method to arrange n elements of array in particular format or sequence, either ascending or descending. Now in other words, we can say that it's just a process of placing elements into from a collection in some kind of order. That's it. For example, like a list of words that could be sorted alphabetically or by length, like searching. Now the efficiency of sorting algorithm is related to the number of items being processed. Now it is being estimated that 20 to 25% of computing power is used for sorting activities. That is due to there are a lot of possible reasons for that. Some of them are like first, it gives an abstract way of studying program accuracy. That's why many applications require sorting. Second, many applications use insufficient sorting algorithms. Now, in computer science, bogus sort is also known as permutation sort, stupid sort, or deep sort. It is a highly inefficient sorting algorithm based on generate and test paradigms. So these are some of the reasons for that. Now the question arises why we use sorting. Because sorting will put item in a list into an order. Like example, we can put in alphabetical or numerical order. Now sorting of list can take a long time if the list is large. Now this can be done easily by creating a computer program. Now it makes sorting of list much easier.
Now guys, let's have a look on applications of sorting. I will be discussing you about four type of applications you might get from these four applications. So let's start the applications. Now number one, let us assume we have to make a list of student names. So now to sort a particular student or to check easily, what do we do? We will prepare a list such that the list contains the name of student, ID and their scores. Now from this list we can easily sort any student by their ID or name. Okay, now let's take second application. In this, let's assume we have to give grades to student on basis of their assignments. We will prepare a list assigning the scores to the assignments. Just this simple. Now the third application. In this application we have to prepare a list of horses after a race. So now for a payoff calculation we have to sort the horses. Now what we do to make a list is sorting the horse on the basis of their finish timing. Like example, horse number 1 taken time t1. Now the horse number 2 taken time t1 plus x. In this way we can arrange all the horses according to their finish timing and make it easy for payoff calculations. Now the final application. In this now you can use binary search on one kind of unsorted array. Now the rotated array, it can be done in big O of log n time, like a typical binary search, but uses an adjust, divide and conquer approach. So these are some of the applications of sorting you might you might get understood. Okay guys, so let's have look on some of the sorting methods. I will be explaining you about four of the sorting methods: selection sort, bubble sort, merge sort, and quick sort. Let's have a quick look on these sorting methods. Okay. Now first, the selection sort. It is simple sorting algorithm. This sorting algorithm is in place comparison based algorithm in which the list is divided into two parts. First, the sorted part at the left and the unsorted part at the right hand initially. Now the sorted part is empty and the unsorted part is in the entire list. This is about the selection sort. Now we'll look at the bubble sort. So, bubble sort. It is sometimes referred as shrinking sort. It is a simple sorting algorithm that repeatedly steps through the list, compares adjacent elements, and swap them if they are in a wrong order. Like if they pass through the list is repeatedly until the list is sorted. Okay, that's the bubble sort. Now we'll look at the merge sort. It is a sorting technique based on the divide and the conquer rule, with the worst case time complexity being big O of n log n. It is one of the most rejected algorithms. The merge sort first divides the array into equal half, then combine them in the sorted manner. That's it, the merge sort. Okay, now we'll have a look on the quick sort. So it is a highly efficient sorting algorithm and is based on the partitioning of array. Now data into the smaller array. A large array of the large array is partitioned into two arrays, one of which holds values smaller than the specified value, and say let's say the pivot based on which the partition is made, and the another array holds the value greater than the pivot value. These are the basic defines for these sorting methods. Now we'll be looking at or discussing it in details. Okay, so now let's start the discussion with the selection sort. Okay guys, let's start with the methods of sorting. Firstly, we'll start with the most basic sorting method, that is selection sort. Let me first read the basic definition of the selection sort, then we'll discuss it in detail. The selection sort performs sorting by repeatedly putting the largest element in the unsorted portion of the array to the end of the unsorted portion until the whole array is sorted. So basically, this definition is wanted to say this, that find minimum element in the unsorted array and swap it with the element at beginning. That's how you can do the simple sorting, selection sorting. And second point, it is similar to the way that many people do their sorting. Okay guys, let us understand this by taking an example of selection sort. Now let's start with the example. As you can see on the screen, we have been given this example. Now this example is an unsorted. Now we have to sort it by using selection sort technique. Now as I told, first step is you have to find the minimum element in the unsorted array. Then the second step is swap it with the element at beginning. So now let's find the minimum element in this array. So as you can see, the minimum element is 10. So first we will select the 10 and then swap it with the first position, and the 14 is at the first position, so 10 and 14 will get swapped. After that 10 will be at the the beginning position. So now 10 will be shown you in the green, means that is sorted. So now we have to solve the rest of the unsorted elements by using this technique only. So now the minimum element we can see in the array is 14. So now we'll swap 14 to the second position of the array. So second position we have the number 33. We swap the 14 and 33. Now in the next step we have 14 on the second at, at the second position. So now 10 and 14, these both are sorted. So now we left these elements in the array uh, known as unsorted array. So by using this technique only, the swapping the minimum element, we can. So guys, as you can see, I have sorted the array step by step, and in the last you can see the 10, 14, 19, 27, 33, 35, 42, 44. These all are sorted and in ascending order. As I have told you earlier, in the sorting, what is sorting? Sorting is a method to arrange n elements of array in a particular format, either ascending or descending. So as you can see, it is ascending order and it is sorted. Now I hope you are clear that what is selection sort by the example given. So now we'll be moving forward to bubble sort. Let's go. Okay guys, so let's start with the bubble sort. Firstly, I will be reading the definition and then will explain it to you. Then, as per the PPT, I will be explaining you the steps to do or to solve the bubble sort, and you will be more clear of the bubble sort in the example I will be giving you. Okay, so let's start with the definition of the basic bubble sort. It, it's sometimes referred as the shrinking sort. Is simple sorting algorithm that repeatedly steps through the list, compares adjacent elements and swap them if they are in the wrong order. The pass through the list is repeated until the list is sorted. And now the basic meaning is how to solve the bubble sort is just repeatedly swap two adjacent elements if they are in the wrong order. Now this is what basic bubble sort is. Now what is wrong order and right order? Wrong order is the left value should should never be the greater than the right value. Means if you want the right order, then the right value should be always higher than the left value. Okay, now so let's start with the procedure of bubble sort. Bubble sort examines the array from start to finish, comparing elements as it goes. Second, anytime it finds a larger element before a smaller element, it swaps the two. Third, in the way the larger elements are passed towards the end. Fourth, the largest element of the array therefore bubbles to the end of the array. Fifth, then it repeats the process of the unsorted portion of the array until the whole array is sorted. Now the bubble sort works on the same general principle as shaking a soft drink bottle. Nice. Right after shaking, the contents are a mixture of bubbles and soft drink distributed randomly. So because our bubbles are lighter than the soft drink, they raise to the surface, displacing the soft drink downwards. So this is how the bubble sort got its name, because the smaller element float on the top while the larger element sink to the bottom. Hope you guys understand the bubble sort. If not, then don't worry. We will be discussing an example too, then you will be clear, more clear. Okay, this is the example you have been given. 14, 33, 27, 35 and 10. Now we has to sort it using bubble sort technique. Now what is bubble sort? Repeatedly swap two adjacent elements if they are in the wrong order. So now what is wrong order? Left is greater than right. This is the wrong order. So we can see that 14 and 33. This is a right order. Why? Because right order needs that the right value, right side value should be greater than the left side value. And 33, as you can see, the 33 is greater than 14. So 33 and 14, these are right order, so they are being kept aside. So now we'll look at 33 and 27. Now as 33 and 27, 33 is greater than 27, so this is wrong order. And in case of wrong order, we swap the two values. So 27 will be at 33 position. So now the array will be 14, 27, 33, then 35 and 10. So now the 14 and 27 is kept aside. So now we'll look at 33 and 35. Now 33 and 35, these are right order. 35 is greater than 33. Okay, then we'll keep this aside and we'll look at 35 and 10. So now this is a wrong order. So we'll swap this. So now 14, 27, 33, and then it will be 10 after that 35. These both should swap their positions. As now the bubble sort technique is over, now we have to apply the selection sort technique to sort the whole array. So now we have the uh, array is 14, 27, 33, 10, and 35. This is a bubble sorted array. So now we have to sort it selection by using selection sort. And by using the selection sort, the minimum element is in the unsorted array, so it's swapped at the beginning. So now we'll select what is the minimum value, the 10. 10 will be swapped to 14 and 14 will be to 10. Now the next value is 14, so it will be taking positions as ascending order, and now it is swapped as it is written. And then where is no swap required, the bubble sort learns that an array is completely sorted: 10, 14, 27, 33, and 35. This this array satisfies both the sorted as it is selection sorted also and bubble sorted also. The bubble sorted condition is the right should be greater than the left value. As you can see, it is satisfied. And selection sort is it should be in the ascending order or descending order, in any one order. And as you can see, it is ascending order: 10, 14, 27, 33, 35. Okay, so this is about the bubble sort. Now we'll look on the take a look on the next sorting method, that is merge sort. Now what is merge sort? It is simply a sorting technique based on divide and conquer technique, with worst case of time complexity being big O of n log n. It is one of the most respected algorithms. Now, what is the divide and conquer technique? In computer science, the divide and conquer is an algorithm design paradigm. A divide and conquer algorithm recursively breaks down a problem into two or more subproblems of the same or related type. Now this until this becomes simple enough to be solved directly. This is the basic divide and conquer technique on which the merge sort is based. Now, as written in the PPT, merge sort first divides the array into equal half and then combines them in a sorted manner. So divide the unsorted list into two sublists about half the size. This is the procedure I am telling you about. Now conquer. Sort each of the two sublists recursively until we have the list size of length 1, in which case the list itself is rendered. Combine, merge the two sorted lists back into one sorted list. Now you will be more clear when I'll show you the example. So let's direct it towards the example. As you can see on the screen, we have been given a unsorted array. So now we'll sort it by using merge sort. And as based on the procedure, what we have to do is to divide the array into two equal parts. Like as you can see in the PPT, 14, 33, 27, 10 is a one part, and 35, 19, 42, and 44. These are different parts. So now we have to further more divide that divided part into subdivision. As you can see, the 1433 is being a different part, and 27 and 10 is also a different part. It is from the one part that we have divided earlier as 35, 19, 42, 44. So now we have to divide this more when the values will be individually different. That like 14 is different, 33 is different, 27, 10, 35, 19, 42, and 44. These all are each different elements from that unsorted array. Now we have to again combine these separate elements into the two groups, two values. Then how will we combine the two values? We'll combine the two values in the sorted manner. And what is the sorted order? Left should be less than right. As you can see, 14 and 33, it is a sorted. Why? Because 14 is less than 33, so we have kept this 14 33 as it is. But in the other case, 27 and 10, these two are swapped. So now we have the first value in that is 10, then 27, as we have done in the other also, 19, 35, 42, and 44. So now we have sorted the different 2 elements, and now we have again joined them into the earlier what we have been differentiated as 10, 14, 27, and 33, and 19, 35, 42, and 44. Now we have to sort them in as by selection sort, like by like the order should be in the ascending order. So we'll shuffle the elements so that the order should be an ascending order. Like 10, 14 are correct. Then uh, put we'll put the 19 from the other slot. 10, 14, 19, then 27, 33. These all values are in ascending order. And as this, we have sorted this array by using merge sort. Okay guys, so let's start with the quick sort. So what is quick sort? It is a highly efficient sorting algorithm and is based on the partitioning of array of data into smaller arrays. A large array is partitioned into two arrays, one of which is hold values smaller than specified values, say pivot, based on which the partition is made, and another array holds value greater than the pivot value. And also it is one of the fastest sorting technique available. And as the merge sort, it also uses the divide and conquer technique. The basic idea is to separate a list of item into two parts surrounding a distinguished item called pivot. Now the performance of the whole quick sort algorithm depends on how well the pivot is taken. Now we recursively perform these three steps. First, bring the pivot to its appropriate position such that left of the pivot is smaller and the right is greater. First, means the pivot should be the mid value. And second step, quick sort the left part, and third step, quick sort the right part. As this as this fastest sorting technique, we can easily sort any array. So guys, that's all about the sorting. Thank you.